Let me tell you a story about rusty chain. What does this rusty chain have to do with the boat? Then you will find out if you watch this episode. A long time has passed. Minutes turning into hours, hours turning into days, and eventually days turning into months. And I know you have been waiting for the next episode. And I planned to do it earlier. However, I also managed to caught a severe pneumonia this winter, so I'm still recovering from the side effects of it, so this episode only comes out now. And now it's almost the middle of February. The ice is melting away. It will soon be spring and the boat season will start. But now we need to go back in time. Here we are in the peak of the winter, with lots of ice and lot of snow on the boat. The temperature was somewhere around minus 20 degrees Celsius. It was very cold, but I wanted to check the boat for leaks, since it was the first time I have left it in the water during winter time. Although the boat was dry, the snow managed to get inside the front cabin. But it's the wrong season. We need to go back. Yes, it's autumn. And I'm currently doing some maintenance on the boat by draining water from all the systems which contain it, to prepare for cold weather. But we still need to go back in time. And here I was invited on a trip on a boat which has been abandoned for 30 years. I could not say no to such generous offer. Nu, man liekas, mēs varam atgriezties, ne? Es domāju, mēs rīpā But let's go back in time a little bit more. Here I am testing if a 4 horsepower engine can power this boat. But we'll still need to go back a little bit. Okay, here we are, the evening before departing to sailing competition. Let's wait for the daylight. It was a warm and sunny summer day. The weather was just perfect, and we have been to this lake already multiple times. So we definitely didn't think that something would go wrong. The boat was sailing very smooth, engine was running perfectly, and everything seemed to be fine until the moment I noticed a smell of burning diesel fuel. I asked my son to check the engine room, and he came back with bad news. Dad, you know, there is a smoke. I quickly ran downstairs to notice that there is a fuel spilling onto the hot exhaust manifold. So, what you see here is fuel return lines, and they are connected to each of the cylinders. And the way the engine works is that each cylinder receives more fuel than needed, and basically the rest goes up to the fuel tank. So far it's good. But the problem what happened is one of those fuel lines split apart. And in that case, the engine would still continue running as normally. However, we were losing quite a lot of fuel, and at the same time, this fuel went into the bilge. Also, engine, of course, would continue running as normal, because it would still receive enough fuel as needed. And to make matters worse, it was spilling onto the exhaust manifold, which was additional risk of fire. Imagine station, we were in a pretty big channel with a lot of anchorage ships, floating docks, some barges maneuvering around, and our boat had to be switched off. So basically engine had to be turned off, and we were investigating the problem. And this is definitely not the place you really want to be with a boat which is not moving under its own power. And we were frantically searching for anything which might help us to fix the fuel line. So just a piece of return line would do. Even this tape probably would do, or anything else. But the main problem was that the day before we departed, my wife was cleaning everything in the boat and removing all the things which would make look like for the boat that it's in a repair state. And basically everything which was not supposed to be visible, so such as tools, accessories, etc., was put into the boxes and stored somewhere into the many compartments of the boat. And I had only 2 of my kids on board. So first I told the oldest one, okay, here is the steering wheel, this is how you start the engine, this is how you stop it. And while youngest was still searching for some spare parts, I was holding this fuel line with my hands. The fuel was scorchingly hot, but I was holding it as long as I could, so that we could at least get limping towards the lake, where we could possibly drop an anchor and do more investigation how to fix the issue which we had. And yes, to make matters worse, of course, wife was not aboard, so she couldn't really tell where there is a box with spare parts for the boat, which we needed extremely for that moment. And so what we did is, it was simple. We were going as long as I could hold the line. Then I told my son, stop the engine. He stopped it. And then the boat was drifting for some time. Then he said, hey, Dad, you know we are going to hit a large boat soon. I said, okay, start the engine. I was holding the fuel line. And so we were limping closer and closer to the lake. And the last kilometer was like extremely hard. I was asking like after each 100 meters, how far are we? How far are we? He said like, okay, 500 meters, 400 meters, 200 meters. But eventually we reached the lake and I dropped an anchor. Of course, it didn't went as expected because we didn't notice that I dropped the wrong anchor. So for the anchor we dropped, the anchor line was not secured. Fortunately, we noticed at the very late moment. But then, on the lake, when the boat was no longer moving, I finally found spare parts, replaced the return line, and then we went full speed ahead towards destination, towards docking place, where the sailing competition would start. And we thought all the troubles are already over. However, we could never be farther away from the truth. Knowing everything what would happen, At this stage, I would be just turning around the boat and going back to the marina. However, unfortunately, we cannot always predict the future. Just something around 100 meters, I would dock a boat and everything would be fine. At least, this is what I thought. I don't know why, but I'm usually having bad luck when approaching the docking place, and this unfortunately was one of those times. So, sorry for using some things which I just have at hand, but basically this is what happened. So, I was planning that we would be docking the boat like sideways to the dock, and in order to do it, I did a little bit turn to the left in order to make it a wider turn so I could be able to do it without extra maneuvering. However, at the moment when I turned it sideways to the left, my son screamed, "Hey, don't go there, it's too shallow." However, at that moment, it was already too late. And we were stuck somewhere here, around like 10 meters from the dock. To make matters worse, we actually later found out that we had to park it sideways like this. And if that would be the case, I would be simply going straight line and I would not move into the shallow waters as I did now. But now we had to get out of the situation somehow. So we were in trouble again. At first, I thought maybe it would be good to check what's underside, but since I had a broken rib, unfortunately I fell down on an air compressor about a couple of days before this event started. I decided not to go check, and since I knew that the lake has a sandy and muddy bottom, I thought nothing could probably go wrong if I could just try to forward and the reverse. So I did. I put the boat into forward, I put it in the reverse, and we were still stuck in the same place. And then after like 10 minutes of trying, we decided to sway a boat a little bit sideways from side to side, at the same time trying to dislodge it from the place where we are stuck. Then suddenly the boat started to move, but at the same time I was hearing extremely loud noise, like we would be hitting rocks, and also very heavy vibration. We definitely knew something has happened. Of course, the boat was finally free. I was able to dock it in a correct place, but I definitely knew that now something is wrong and we have definitely hit something, and this definitely was not a sandy bottom. First thing I did, I just ran into the engine room, check if we are not having any leaks. So the leaks were as usual, practically there were no leaks, just a couple of drips from this shaft, which is nothing unusual, but overall it seemed fine. Then what I did, I pumped out the fuel from this bilge. I asked the marina for them to where to dispose it, so that was taken care of. And then it was time to make a decision, because I knew there will be 2 days when this boat would have to serve as a judge's ship on a lake. Yes, we didn't need it to go very far, but it still had to be in a drivable condition, and it definitely needed to be in a safe state, not to sink the judges on the boat. So even though my rib was broken, I decided I need to go dive down and check what's underneath. I discovered this old rusty chain with a very rusty lock on a steering column. So I removed it and then made another dive. The visibility underwater was very poor, and I was almost not seeing anything, so I had to rely on my GoPro and review the footage later. And I only was able to take very shallow dives and for a very short time because the broken rib was hurting. But even without seeing the footage, what I felt with my fingers didn't feel quite right. And then, as you can see from the video, then basically the propeller has extensive damage. Of course, it's pretty hard to tell from this current situation because it needs to be taken out from inspection. However, I understood also another thing. It's not just a chain we have hit. So basically, what really happened was the following. As we were moving towards the dock, the boat was going, and then it just caught the chain, and this chain stopped boat from moving, so we couldn't move forward or backward. However, when we started to sway the boat sideways and reversing and forwarding, it eventually was caught into the propeller, and then propeller along with the boat was brought closer to a concrete anchor which was attached to this chain. And then propeller got hit not just by a chain, but also by a concrete block. And that is definitely a very bad station we were in. At that moment, I missed my fully protected propeller on my previous boat Hakuna Matata, although I managed to entangle a tow line once. With or without my boat, sailing competition would start. I had 12 hours to make a go or no-go decision. What happened? You will find out in the next episode.